After her new spouse publicly betrays her and marries someone else in front of her, Theresa Caputo, a medium from Long Island, finds her life in ruins. Theresa couldn't stand any more of this pain and humiliation, so she broke down and walked out of the ceremony crying. At that point, she was joined by her ex-husband, Larry Caputo. But there was no hope for the injured Theresa there. "I don't trust you anymore, Larry," she explained, her eyes welling up with tears. Theresa Caputo has tried to balance the challenges of the real world with the unexplainable ability to communicate with ghosts throughout her adult life. Many people considered her to be the Long Island medium, someone who assisted grieving families in finding healing and closure. But in her own life, she had never been able to find true love. When she met her new husband, she felt that she had been given another chance at last. He appeared supportive and sympathetic, unlike anyone she had known before her split from Larry. Theresa allowed herself to believe again. She eased up. Perhaps naively, she believed that this time, love wouldn't be unfaithful to her. Her worst nightmare turned into what should have been a day of joy for others. The unthinkable was done by her new spouse, who publicly betrayed her by making a commitment to another woman in front of friends, family, and onlookers. Not in private, not behind closed doors, but there, like if her heart and dignity were nothing. It was quiet in the room. Gasps reverberated through the crowd. Theresa stood still, her breath trapped in her chest. During her readings, she has seen misery in others and channeled spirits who sobbed for the anguish of betrayal, but she never imagined that she would be experiencing that exact kind of suffering in such a public and humiliating way. She trembled. Her throat tightened. Tears blazed in her eyes till she could no longer hold them back. The formerly confident woman, who was known for her powerful manner and unwavering presence, broke down. Unable to bear the cruelty of it all, tears clouded her vision as she exited the ceremony. The outer world appeared uncannily silent and excessively boisterous at the same time. The September air was harsh on her lungs. She wrapped her arms around herself as if she may fall into invisibility. Then Larry appeared. Her ex-husband, with whom she had shared decades of her life, appeared out of nowhere. He was wearing that worried expression that only someone who truly understands your soul can have. "Theresa," he said softly, reaching out a hand. Theresa winced, nevertheless, and said, "I'm present." The pain of betrayal was new and oozing, not only from her new husband, but also from memories of her former existence. She remembered the arguments and the widening distance between her and Larry before their marriage ended. She reflected on the tears she had shed and questioned why love always seemed to crumble in her grasp. She looked at him suddenly and broke her voice as she said, "Larry, I don't trust you anymore." Larry's fingers dropped slowly. She had been keeping these words to herself for years. His eyes blazed with pain, but he did not object. He didn't defend himself. Instead, as though he had always recognized that truth in her, he nodded. They stood for a long time in silence. Theresa sobbed uncontrollably and let her tears fall into the sidewalk. Larry did not abandon her, but he also did not go too close. At the end, he mumbled, "I know you don't. Maybe you shouldn't. But you also don't have to deal with this alone. I'll stand here as long as you need me to." Theresa had her eyes shut. She felt betrayed, lost, and broken. But she secretly sensed that her story was far from over. She had made healing others her life's work. Now she had to begin the long process of repairing herself. Her talent, hope, has always been about helping others find light in the darkest places. For the first time in a long time, she had to delve into her own broken heart for that light. Although she couldn't bring herself to trust Larry again, his presence served as a reminder that she wasn't invisible. She wasn't forgotten. Her name was still Theresa Caputo, and somehow she would get back up. However, as the sun began to set, a golden glow filled the suburban streets of Hicksville, New York. Long Island medium Theresa Caputo was preparing for a private reading at her home office. She had given innumerable readings throughout the years, but this particular session appeared to hold special meaning. The woman who was scheduled to arrive was more than just a grieving mother. She was dealing with the indescribable burden of losing her own daughter to a terrible crime. The doorbell rang gently, almost unwillingly, and Theresa opened the door to find a middle-aged woman named Karen there. Her eyes were bloated and red, as if she hadn't slept for months. She carried a small silver locket in her trembling hands. Theresa gave her a warm welcome, a seat, and a sip of water. "I don't know if I can do this, but I need to know my daughter is okay," Karen whispered as soon as she took a seat. "It was terrible how she was snatched from me. I really need to hear back from her." Theresa nodded gently. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and allowed the energy of the spirit realm to flow through her. Almost immediately, she felt a presence, strong, urgent, full of love and a strong impulse to defend. "Your daughter is here," said Theresa, looking at Karen. "She stepped forward as soon as you stepped inside. She shows me her gorgeous dark hair, while continuing to protect her heart with her palm. "Mom, I'm fine," she replies. "I want you to know I'm doing fine." Karen gasped and put both palms over her mouth. Tears were running down her face as she nodded. "Emily is that person. She would always play with her hair and touch her heart when she was nervous." Theresa continued in a calm, yet kind voice. "Emily says you still put the blame on yourself." She responds, "You keep reliving the last time you saw her. She wants you to give up because there was nothing you could have done." "Mom, you need to get over your guilt because this wasn't your fault," she responds. Karen broke down and sobbed into her hands. "The night before she left, I warned her not to go out. I begged her, but she wanted to see her friends, so she never went back home. I lost her." Theresa observed both the weight of the loss and the light Emily was trying to express. "Emily is showing me a butterfly. Do you often see butterflies?" "Yes, in the backyard. One always lands close to me when I'm sitting outside." Karen's eyes widened as her head jerked up. "That's me," confirming its authenticity. "Every time you see the butterfly, it's me giving you a hug," she says. "I'm expressing my affection for you." The atmosphere in the room changed. Karen tightened her grip on the locket as her sobs became more subdued tears. "Emily is also showing me a notebook, something she wrote in," Theresa added. "Is her writing still in your possession?" Karen nodded briefly. "I'm too afraid to read her journal. I thought it would hurt too much." "Mom, read it," Emily begs. "She tells me that there are heartfelt and grateful messages in the diary. She gave you a gift, not just pain, when she said, 'There are words I wanted to tell you, words I never got to say.'" Karen's hands trembled. "I had no idea that she wanted me to read it." Theresa maintained her composure in spite of the tears in her eyes. "She tells me that her soul is content. She wants you to do more than just survive." Karen's breath came out shakily as she said, "I don't want my death to be the end of my mom's life too. She was always worried about me rather than herself." That's exactly how she sounds. The reading continued with waves of emotion. Emily talked about her favorite songs, how she liked to talk to her mother about dreams late at night, and even a story about a birthday cake accident that made Karen cry and laugh. Theresa accurately described every detail, and each message appeared to glue the pieces of a broken heart back together. Theresa hesitated for a second. "Emily is showing me a courtroom. Justice is coming," she says. "Have faith." "Did the case move forward?" Karen nodded slowly. "Yes. The person who injured her is still awaiting trial. I've been worried that he might get away." Theresa leaned over after that. She says, "Mom, the truth will be revealed. Don't put the weight of justice on yourself. Trust the process. Now that I've found peace, it's your turn." The remarks had a profound effect on Karen. She could breathe again, as if a mountain of shame, anger, and dread had been lifted a little. Karen's expression lightened after the treatment. The tears were still there, but they were mixed with relief, hope, and love, not just pain. She stood up and embraced Theresa tightly. "I believed I would never experience serenity again, but you have given it to me. Thank you." Whispering, "It's Emily who gave you peace," Theresa returned her hug. "You never lost her. Every step of the way, she is right here." The sky had transformed into a canvas of blues and purples as Karen stepped outside into the evening air. A butterfly flitted down and landed on her shoulder as she was getting to her car. She let out a gasp and grinned despite her tears, convinced that Emily was still with her. But Long Island Medium's cameras rolled again, but this time there was a difference. Theresa Caputo, who is renowned for her large hair, outspoken nature, and exceptional ability to communicate with spirits, has been guiding viewers through her unusual existence for over 15 years. They had observed her juggling her marriage to Larry Caputo, her career, her friendships, and parenting. However, the energy felt more intense, intimate, and more emotional than ever in this Season 13 teaser. On Long Island, the scene began in a peaceful cafe. Nervous, Theresa was the first to arrive. As if bracing herself for what was about to happen, she fidgeted with her phone, looking intermittently toward the door. In my 15 years of doing this show, I've never sat down in front of the cameras to talk so openly about something so private, she said in a quiet whisper to the camera crew. However, here we are. Furthermore, I'm not even sure whether I'm ready. Larry entered a few seconds later. He appeared older but more composed, and he exuded a quiet strength. Since their split, the two had not dined together in this manner. There had been casual discussions at family get-togethers, phone calls regarding the kids, and brief encounters, but never like this. Not straight, not raw. Theresa gave him a small grin in greeting. "Hi, Larry." "Hey, Trey," he said in a kind but wary tone. With years of unsaid words occupying the space between them, he sat down opposite her. Theresa took a big breath and nodded when the producers asked whether they were ready to start. Every moment of emotion was captured by the cameras. With an emotional Long Island accent, she started, "I think we owe it to ourselves and maybe even to the people who have been watching us for all these years, to just talk. Really discuss." Larry bent over. "I concur. It has been a long time coming." There was silence for a moment. As though unsure of where to begin, they both looked down at the table. Finally, Theresa broke it. "You know, Larry, I thought it was simply a phase when we initially split up. Perhaps we simply needed some room. I didn't think it would actually make a big difference." Larry's eyes softened as he let out a breath. "I understand. Besides, I don't think either of us wanted things to go that way. But I also think that we both lost ourselves somewhere in the middle of everything. Your gift, the performance, the fame, the tours. Life got busy, Trey. In addition, love may sometimes be forgotten in the chaos." She did not cry, though her eyes glistened. Instead, she chuckled a little. "You were always better at putting things into words than I was. I simply felt as though you were slipping away, and I was at a loss for how to keep you around. My universe consisted of people, readings, and spirits. Perhaps you needed me in a different way than I could provide." Larry gave a slow nod. "You're correct. I required us. There were moments when I thought we were no longer a team. But I also know that your work is more than just a job. It's a profession. And I've always been proud of you." That's when Theresa's voice broke. Larry leaned across the table to construct a bridge over the unseen barrier separating them rather than grasping her hand. "Can you imagine how painful it was to feel that I was no longer sufficient for you?" he asked. "You were sufficient at all times. Always. It simply wasn't about you not being sufficient. The issue was that we didn't spend enough time together. And I'm sorry about that." It became quieter in the cafe around them. The intimacy of the occasion seemed to be felt even by the crew. Not wanting the camera to focus on her vulnerability for too long, Theresa wiped her eye quickly. "You realize what's amusing?" she said, trying to lighten the mood. "Over the 15 years that this show has been filmed, spirits have spoken to everyone else, but never to us. Not like this." Larry laughed quietly. The truth lingered between them as the room froze once more. "Perhaps that's because we had to have this discussion on our own, without outside assistance." "So, what are our next steps?" Theresa inquired in a low voice. Larry paused to consider his response. "I'm not sure. I think we still provide for our kids. We still hold one another in high regard. And maybe we don't completely close the door. Life involves some degree of unpredictability. Who knows what the future will hold? I'm not sure whether we'll ever be US. But Larry, you will always be important to me." That won't ever change, Theresa said after examining him for a while. The cameras moved back slightly to give the moment the space it needed as he stated solemnly, "And I'll always care about you, Trey." Theresa reclined back in her chair and exhaled deeply, as though she had released years of repressed emotions. At last, she turned to face the camera and remarked, "This has never occurred in 15 years. I've never sat with Larry in front of the world before, feeling so exposed and vulnerable. However, perhaps it is the lesson. Perhaps telling the truth instead of acting as though everything is all right is the first step toward healing. And the truth is, no matter what happened, we built a life together," Larry said softly. "That is important." With those two individuals, no longer husband and wife but yet connected by love, history, and respect, the sneak peek came to an end. It was neither a farewell nor a reconciliation. It was something genuine, something in the middle. The words, Season 13, "Sometimes the hardest readings are the ones you do with yourself," displayed as the screen went blank. But the streets of Hicksville, New York, where Theresa Caputo had established her life and work, were bathed in a warm orange glow as the sun descended. Her journey as the Long Island medium, a lady who could connect the living with the spirits of their loved ones, was followed for years by admirers nationwide. She had become well-known due to her outrageous personality, her fierce nails, her wild blonde hair, and her strong Long Island accent. More than that, though, she had moved people. Through tears, she had brought closure, hope, and occasionally even laughter to bereaved families. However, Theresa had avoided the spotlight for the previous few years. Theresa needed a vacation after so many seasons, so many heartbreaking readings, and so many upheavals in her personal life. Her breakup with Larry, her family's difficulties adjusting to stardom, and the demands of being in the spotlight all the time. Her fans had been waiting for her to stop giving private readings. Social media is inundated with queries every day. When will Theresa return? Will a new season be released? The solution was at last here. Long Island Medium, Theresa Returns, a brand new season that was expected to be larger, bolder, and more emotional than ever before, was formally announced by TLC. This comeback's narrative started out modestly. On a particular morning, Theresa was sitting in her kitchen drinking coffee from a cup that said, "Spirit Junkie." Her daughter Victoria had been in town with her newborn, and the house was bustling with the happy bustle of a young family. As she frequently did, Theresa sensed Spirit come forward when she was rocking her grandchild. Theresa silently gasped as she felt the energy of an older grandmother figure who wanted to express gratitude for continuing the love. She was aware that the message was intended for her daughter, not for herself. Victoria's eyes welled up with tears as she softly repeated the words. She said, "Ma, you can't quit doing this. You're still needed by others." Theresa sensed it at that very moment. The draw. She was unable to completely abandon her calling. Neither the spirits nor those who required her gift were finished with her. The enthusiasm was palpable when the new season's cameras started rolling. Theresa went back to the nail shop, the pizza business, and even the grocery store, and the team followed her across Long Island. Time and place were irrelevant to Spirit, as always. Everywhere, messages flooded in. Theresa abruptly halted in the midst of the vegetable aisle while shopping for dinner in the first episode. She gripped her cart and glanced about, finally focusing on a middle-aged man carrying an apple bag. "Pardon me," she said as she approached him. "I'm not trying to be intrusive, but did you recently lose your brother?" The man's mouth fell open as his eyes grew wide. "Yes," he said incredulously. Theresa nodded emphatically. "He's telling me that you were the one who always looked out for him since he's standing right behind you. He wants to thank you. When you were kids, did you and he go apple picking? He's displaying apples to me." The man started crying in the store, covering his face with his hands. The rawness, the incredulity, the healing, all of it was captured on camera. Other customers paused and gazed in wonder. Fans were reminded of why they initially adored Theresa, because it was typical Theresa. However, this new season was more than just impromptu readings. Theresa desired to delve farther. She wished to investigate the ways in which her talent influenced her personal life, relationships, and prospects. Theresa sat down with her ex-husband Larry during one tearful moment. Years had passed since their divorce, but they discussed their experiences of falling in love and losing each other while navigating her unique gift for the first time on video. With her fingernails drumming on her coffee cup, Theresa whispered softly, "Larry, I know our marriage didn't last, but I'll always love you for being part of my journey. Without you, I couldn't have made it through those early seasons." Larry gave a nod, his voice full of passion. "And you have my undying admiration, Theresa. It's beyond this world what you do for people. We may not have been able to maintain our marriage, but we will always be related." Later, viewers at home would post heart emojis and tears on social media, claiming it was one of the series' most moving scenes. Theresa's trip outside of Long Island was another highlight of the season. Among the families she met nationwide was one in Texas who had lost a teenage daughter in a terrible vehicle accident. Because she felt guilty for not stopping her daughter from leaving the house that evening, the mother had been unable to move on. When Theresa continued, "Your daughter is showing me a pair of angel wings, and she's putting them on you," her voice grew softer during the reading. "Mom, you were my angel back then, and you are still my angel today," she says. The mother clutched Theresa's hands as she broke down in sobs. She felt her daughter was finally at rest, and for the first time in years, she managed to smile despite her sorrow. Theresa's personal life was changing behind the glitz and glitter of filming. Now that her children were starting families of their own, she felt a new feeling of responsibility as a grandma. In addition to showcasing her talent, she wanted the concert to leave a legacy for her family, a chronicle of the love, healing, and relationships she had created. Theresa gave everything some thought in the season finale. With her blonde hair blowing in the wind, she stood on the Long Island beach, gazed out to sea, and addressed the camera straight. "I had no idea how the world would respond when I originally embarked on this quest. I wasn't sure if others would believe me or laugh at me, but I've learned that everyone experiences grief. Everybody loses things. And love never dies." This season should serve as a reminder that we are never truly alone, I hope. Spirit is always with us. And as long as I'm here, I'll keep spreading their messages. Welcome to my channel, everyone. I'm Mina, and I hope today is going well for you. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.